Hi everyone, it's Brenda back again with another episode of Three Uniques. Today I have on Deborah Rosati. Hi Deborah, how are you doing today?
I'm well. Thank you, Brenda.
I'm good. I'm so happy that you're here. So everyone knows Deborah is the founder and CEO of Women Get On Board. She's a certified corporate director as well as a chartered professional accountant and an entrepreneur. And
You got it.
I'm sure there's other things, and we're going to learn more about you today that we'll list off on there. But huge successes overall, and I got connected to you because I actually went to one of the Women Get On Board meetings in Vancouver pre-pandemic. So this is maybe 2018, 2019. And I remember you leading us through a session, talking us through all the reasons why women should get on boards, and then how to do it. And you gave us like a really clear list. I think there was like 10 or 12 things that you said this is what you could do to do that. And I was really impressed because it was just like, okay, bang bang bang, and then I was looking through it, it's like, okay, I've got like 7 or clear 8 out of 12. I feel really confident that I could do that. And since then I actually got on a board. So
Congratulations.
yeah, I owe that to your list.
Thank you.
So tell us a little bit more about Women Get On Board, and why did you start it? How does it support women in their leadership journey?
Well, thank you. It's my social purpose company. I founded Women Get On Board in 2015 with the mission to connect, promote, and empower women to corporate boards. We have over 800 members across Canada. And these are aspiring women corporate directors and accomplished women corporate directors. So, sort of distinct stages of career. And we're diverse in skills and expertise, in region and age and ethnicity. So we're a very diverse community. And the three pillars are connect. So how can we connect our members to board opportunities or to within the community network? Two, to promote. How do we promote our members when they get board appointments, or how do we promote board opportunities to them? And then the empowerment piece is what you would have come to, Brenda, if we
Mhm.
had done an event pre-pandemic in person, is the empowerment piece, which is the education, how to elevate women, how to get more women thinking, hey, I can do it. What are the tips? How can I get there? What are some strategies? And so really, it's a social purpose company, and we're actually having our first inaugural summit in Toronto on May 18th. I'm really excited. We've got
Exciting.
amazing speakers, sponsors, and we're pretty sold out. So I'm pretty excited.
That's very exciting. That'll be quite amazing to be able to host that now with everybody in person. So, what are you seeing out there? I mean, there's been so much change, and obviously, like every kind of headline every week is about something relating to like Great Resignation or this Great Migration of people. There were some really staggering numbers coming out of fall last year, I believe. Just like we saw numbers out of the U.S., but also in Canada, a lot of women leaving the workplace. Now, that may have been maybe more at hourly levels, but we were also seeing it in mid-level management, executive levels. Has that impacted women getting on boards, or is that like, have you seen like people not wanting to do that, or I'm just wondering how that's
I
impacted?
actually think it's created more of a pipeline of qualified women
Mhm.
for corporate boards, because the great resignation is, I think, women that are at a certain stage of their career, they'll look for a transition and say, how else can I stay professionally engaged? I may not want to stay in a full-time position.
Right.
So I think it lends itself really well to those that might be looking and saying, I want a higher purpose in my life. I want meaningful impact, but I want flexibility. And they may be at that stage in their career where this might be an option for them now, not 10 years from now. So I actually think it's opened up the pipeline for more women to be thinking about board service than perhaps prior to the pandemic.
And what are some considerations that women should think of? I mean, again, I mentioned, your
The
child.
10th,
Is it 10 or 12?
yeah,
I can't remember.
I had 10.
Yeah.
I have these sort of 10 board ready questions. And one of them is, what experiences do you have? Where are you in your career? And I say it's probably that 10 to 15 years of postgraduate work where you are a master of something, 10,000 hours of being a master in an area of expertise, of skills, and management. And so, you look at your experience. Two, you look at your time. Do you have the time? to contribute to a board? If you've got a full-time job, do you, and you said you've just joined a board, Brenda, so between your business and everything else that you're going on, do you have the time to commit to a board? Because it can be 200 to 300 hours. Believe me, I just came off of 2 year-end audit cycles for 2 of my boards, and they all collided at the same time. And trust me, it was a lot of lean in. And so sometimes you've got your standard hours, your corporate calendar, and then other times, circumstances, you might be in a transaction, you might be in a financing, you might be doing, a CEO succession. It could be a multitude of things. So you have to have the time. And then 3, I would say, if you are currently working, do you have the sponsorship of your board, your executive, your others around you to say, okay, we believe, we want to support you in your leadership development. And it could be supporting you for funding for a program, a governance education program, funding for one of our programs that we have at Women Get on Board, which is Getting Board Ready, or a mentorship program, or financial intelligence in the boardroom. So it's being realistic. And then once you sort of get through those and say, are you ready? First of all, do you have the experience? 2, do you have the time? Do you have the sponsorship? And then really, then it's thinking about what steps do you need to take? What kind of education do you need to take? What types of boards would you want to serve on? How do you educate yourself? And how do you network your way onto those boards? So those are sort of top 5, I would say. And then we can go below the line, but I would
Go
say
deeper
top
into
5.
that. Well, and even down the education stream. So I just finished last year. I completed my corporate director designation through DeGroote at McMaster. I know there's the ICD program with Rotman out of Toronto. Are those the 2 main ones in Canada that are recognized as far as designations or certifications for corporate directors?
I would say I have my ICD.D, so designated, as you said, certified director, designated from ICD. Yours is DeGroote. But there are a lot of people, there's programs out of the US, so because everything is virtual. So those would be the 2 prominent ones in Canada, but then there's additional ones, which I just finished going through. Competent Boards has an ESG certification designation program. And I just went through that, and it was phenomenal. Global leaders, global cohort, all virtual. And now I have my GCB.D. So there's a lot of programs. There's also 1-day programs, 2-day programs. Then there's certification or designation program. So I think, you step back and say, what do you really need? Do you have the time? The programs like ICD, the Director's Education Program, and the DeGroote are very expensive programs. So I would always say to someone, can you get sponsorship? Can someone fund that? I went through the program for ICD and the Director's Education, and my board paid for it, the board that I was on at the time. So.
Right. Yeah. And boards will often do that. And you can also, depending on, if you're employed or you've got your own company, you might also be able to go through some type of small business grant program. So there's options like that you can look at. Women getting on boards, and again, sort of the appetite for women. I mean, we hear, say in Canada, I mean, when I was going through my corporate director program and we were looking at sort of statistics out there, yes, there's women getting on boards, but there's still sort of that token woman on board. When do you see it being that there's more women on boards, or that it's just part of, I guess the better way I could phrase it is that it wasn't like I was tapped on the shoulder to say, hey, you should now be thinking about this from a career development standpoint. You should now be thinking about positioning yourself to go out on a board. I was fortunate later on in my career that my aunt actually suggested that to me, because she serves on 3 boards, and she's like, this is where you should take your career next. But it wasn't something like inside organizations. Where do you feel like the appetite is for that? How can women learn more about this if it's not something that, say, their boss or their company is, say, promoting?
So as an example, we have over 20 corporate members, and those are organizations, firms that say, we want to develop our women leaders. So they join as a corporate member, and they identify, could be between 5, 10, 15, 20, 30, 40 women within there. In fact, we just signed up a significant corporate membership with Deloitte, and they're identifying 65 women leaders in the first 18 months, and then 65 women. So there are organizations that are getting behind it because they want to advance women in leadership. So there's more of that. And I think with the broader DEI, the diversity, equity, and inclusion lens in which organizations have, they've got to look at programs to get women through those and to develop that pipeline. So I think there's a lot more awareness. I still think, if you look at the data last year for the proxy circular, Osler's they do a diversity disclosure report every year. And last year it was just over 23% of all TSX listed companies have women. And for the large banks, it was higher. For the small cap, it was lower. So kind of coming in. So if you just sort of take a general rule, 80% of boards are made up of men. If you just take that, the other 20% are women. As women get into more leadership roles, as women are leading, are chairing boards, chairing, nominating corporate governance committees, they can say, hey, let's make sure we have diversity on the slate. Let's pause and do the right thing, and let's expand our network. And that's where we get a lot of postings and opportunities coming in our way, because boards know, companies know that they have to add diversity.
Right. Now, you mentioned someone who's sort of like 10, 15 years postgraduate, they're developing that certain level of mastery. I have 2 daughters. They're teenagers. They're not even into university, although they're definitely, actively engaged in sort of picking that and thinking about career and broader. But because I've been talking and I'm an advocate of getting more women into boards, me taking that path, they know that that's now an option for them. So if you're still not at that level yet, maybe you're in your 20s and you're thinking that, it'd be great to sort of have that as a bookmark in my career plan. I remember you saying at that networking event that I went to a few years ago that even getting on your board in your condo, getting on a school board, or maybe it's a board with your children's daycare, being active in that, just getting into the governance space, I think is the key thing. What would you say to that too?
Well, coincidentally enough, today in the Globe and Mail, there was an article that came out. One of our regional ambassador members was quoted. There's a program for women under 25, and it was about getting younger women on boards. And there's a program, I think it's Girls for Governance or Girls on Boards, and they have a program to help develop. And these women so your daughters could potentially be in that kind of program where they get opportunity to observe on a board. And
Right.
Today in the Globe and Mail, this article came out to say boards do need younger women on their boards, and it was referring to that particular program. So there's a lot of different programs. So I wasn't saying that if don't start thinking about it,
Right.
when you're in your late 30s, mid to late 30s, you can certainly. I started earlier in my career as a CPA. That was part of just giving back to community. And so by default of having financial expertise, it was quite evident that I could be a treasurer, serve on an audit finance committee. So I did start, my first one of boards was Red Cross, and it was early on in my career.
Okay, great. That's amazing. Well, you're here today too to share your 3 uniques with us. So I'd love to get into that conversation, switching gears a little bit. So how about it? Let's hear your 3 uniques.
Okay, well, I thought about it. You've had lots of great materials you sent, and kudos to you for positioning the 3 uniques. So my first is I'm a connector. My second one is I'm a catalyst. And my third one is I'm courageous.
3 C's.
Yeah, I keep it simple.
Yeah.
And then it just makes it easier for me. But I noticed yours is a connector too. So I promise I didn't take from your list.
It's okay. We were talking about that earlier before we pressed record, and I'm totally fine with it. I actually do interview quite a few people that are connectors, creative, so it comes up a few times in some of the interviews. And the interesting thing about it is that how you approach probably connection, which I'll ask you in a few minutes, is going to be different than how I approach it. We could read the same networking blog, but we're going to approach it differently because we're different people. So how does connection show up in your life?
Well, it's one of the 3 pillars of Women Get on Board is the connection piece. And funny enough, I would get people saying to me, oh, you're a great connector. And it was kind of like, I wouldn't go around and say, hey, I'm a connector, but I would always get that back intuitively, because I love meeting people. I love helping them out. I love understanding what they need. And then I might know someone and I can make the connection. And so I think it's a natural talent that you have. That either you have it or you don't. And, during the pandemic, a lot of people said, oh, I just disconnected and I didn't stay connected. And I'm like, whoa, wait a sec. I was on Zoom. I was posting. I was on social. I was over connected during the pandemic. And so I guess it really just depends on where you show up and what you like to do. And I really do. Making those connections are so meaningful.
Yeah, I love that. I actually started the podcast during the pandemic. It was 2 months into the pandemic where I was like, how am I going to connect with people? I can't go to virtual events. I'm just going to host everyone I know on my podcast, and then I can just talk to people and find out what's going on in their life. And plus, I was passionate about what makes people unique, so hence a podcast. But I think that's sometimes the beauty of like the connection piece is you can, especially nowadays in the digital age and the virtual age, you can just connect to anywhere to anyone. So it's amazing.
Yeah, so it's been powerful. I think during the pandemic, you could, as an entrepreneur, I had to pivot the business. We weren't doing things in person. So what was the way to stay connected
Mhm.
to community? And we went to virtual events, and then we built virtual programming and virtual. So it just evolved. And now, we're going back to a hybrid. Like I said earlier, we're having our first in-person summit. And I have women coming across the country, and they're all saying, are you going? Are you going? Great. I'll meet you there. I'll meet you there. And it really is a hub to connect.
I love that. And then your second one is Catalyst. So
Yeah.
yeah,
And
how does that show up for you?
I like to say I'm a catalyst for change because I try to look at the women get on board as a higher purpose in life. It's not about me getting on a board because I'm on many boards. It's about getting more women on boards. And so I like to think of myself as a catalyst for change because I've been on corporate boards for 20 years. And yes, I've been usually the only woman around the boardroom table. So if I can catalyze change for other women, then it meets my overall purpose is to get more women on boards. And so it's a catalyst. Like you have to step up and you want to catalyze change. It may not be happening as quickly as you want it to be, but every day you show up and every day there's one more woman on a board, you are catalyzing change each and every day.
Has there been someone in your life, like a mentor early on in your career that really, spawned that energy around being that catalyst for change in you?
I would say it was my father.
Hmm.
My father was my mentor. I always said it early on, I always said I wanted to be a businessman just like my father. And I went into business school and I became a CPA, but I've been in business for 40 years in my life. I love business. I love change. I asked the question because my third one is just about being courageous. So I'm not afraid. I'm fearless to say, hey, maybe we should do it this way. And if you have that motive and that passion and purpose, if you're purpose driven, then catalyzing change, just they go hand in hand.
I love it. And so yeah, let's go into your third unique, courageous.
Yeah, and that really comes from Janice McDonald did a book on fearless women. I'm literally my computer props it up here. It's
Yeah.
called Fearless: Girls with Dreams, Women with Vision. And Janice McDonald launched that 2 years ago,
Okay.
just pre-pandemic for
Mhm.
International Women's Day. And there's, I don't just, I think 75 women that she interviewed, and I was one of them. And it was about being fearless, right? And so, I think through my whole life, I was fearless. My brother was 2 years older. He didn't want to swim. I said, I'll swim. He didn't want to go to school. I'll go to school for you. So I just feel like that being courageous element of stepping up, asking the tough questions, leaning in. Last week, we had a Women Get on Board speaker series, and I had the very good fortune of interviewing Scott Baldwin with the director of PrEP. And he had done a guide about being courageous in the boardroom. So we did our session last week about courage in the boardroom.
Mhm.
And he had a phenomenal quote from, FDR and I had a quote from Ernest Hemingway to describe what courage was. And it was really about, I make sure I have it, is grace under pressure. So to be
Yeah.
graceful
Mhm.
under these pressure tactics that you go through. And I thought, well, that's a really great way to describe is, to have the courage to stand up, but have the composure to do the right thing.
Yeah, and the appreciation I think comes with grace too, with say like as a board, working with the operations team, the CEO to make sure that there's that partnership between the board, right? But then you can also have that dissent where you need to have the dissent, like and be able to push back on things. So it's always like sort of a balance, right, between that. I think it's a great
But
definition.
yeah, and your job is, and we discussed this in this session last week on courage in the boardroom. was your job is you're serving a higher purpose. You're not there for yourself.
Right.
So when you know you're serving the best interests of all stakeholders, when you have to ask those courageous questions and have that courage, is you're not doing it for yourself. You're doing it. It's part of your fiduciary duty
Right.
and part of your broader serving a bigger community and a stakeholder group. That's what gives you courage.
And I think we've seen that also over the last couple of years. When sort of the cliche of rubber hits the road, where some companies have really stepped up, whether it's through corporate social responsibility or being able to pivot due to cash flow crunches. Where was the board in that interaction into that strategy? Some boards were really present. Some boards you could tell were not probably as present, depending on what the outcome of that company was.
Yeah, and I think, I always say you need to know when to lean in as a
Hmm.
board member and when to lean out. And sometimes a lot of it comes from your gut. I've seen this before. I better ask the questions, right? And that's where it comes with experience when you come to a boardroom. If you're very young in your career and you haven't experienced restructuring cash flow issues, you don't know how to hunker down. So sometimes you just need to have wisdom around the table to ask the questions. You may not have the answer, but you need to have the wisdom around the table.
Yeah, that's great. What do you do, like a habit that you have in place or a ritual, Deborah, to keep those three uniques in check so that like when you're, in that moment of decision making or being intentional with something, that it's like, oh, I can always go back to these three uniques and it keeps me grounded, keeps me on pace.
Well, I always start the beginning of the year. There's Chris Brogan does this, or it comes out of my three words, and they're unique words every year. And I've
Hmm.
been doing it since 2015, and so that's what grounds me every day. And my three words are light, lift, and laugh. And every day I think through on that. But when I bring it back to the three uniques that we're talking about
Hmm.
on connection, so I think about how can I connect others when I'm very socially active on LinkedIn. So I'm in and I love interacting on there because I'll see people got an appointment or they had an article, and it's about being really authentic about it and approaching it. And I do it on a daily basis. I don't do it because, gee, I want to get more followers. I do it because I'm very interested in understanding who's doing what and making the appropriate connections. So it's a daily. So if I looked at that about connection as I look being socially active on in my platform of choice is really LinkedIn. So I do that every day. And then the second one, and also being intentional. If I have a call and you're talking to someone and they ask, you ask and you volunteer to make a connection, is being deliberate and making that connection, not doing it. Do you know what
Right.
I mean? It's just,
Yeah.
yeah. And then
Well, yeah, it's the
um,
adage of like, we should go for coffee sometime, and then it never happens, right? So it's
make
like,
it happen, make
make
it
it happen.
happen. And
Yeah.
what I've been doing is, maybe going for coffee isn't realistic, just and I'll be like, well, let's just do a virtual call, right?
Mhm.
Let's get that in, because at least that's the preliminary, right? As
Right.
opposed to waiting for when you can actually get in person. And then the second one, about catalyst and how do I bring that into my daily, it's a catalyst for change every day. I look at it when I look at things, I'm like, how can I do it differently? Or how can I create something new that will have meaning and impact? So
Right.
it's not like I go out and say, hey, how can I catalyze change? I've got to change everything. But when you look at what you're doing, is like, oh, I could change that. I could catalyze that going forward, but also being realistic of when you do it. You can't do it all at once, right? So
Right.
you got to think about, if you're going to catalyze, what do you hear in the here and now? And then what can you do for the future?
Love it.
And then the third one, you
Yeah.
want on the
Yeah,
third one,
sure.
which
Yeah,
is
go
about
for it.
being the third one of being courageous, I think every day is going outside your comfort zone, putting your hand up, doing things that you wouldn't do
Mhm.
normally, pushing yourself, because we can all get very comfortable, right? And so you started a podcast during the pandemic. My team, we're getting ready for the summit, and one of our social media person that we're going on TikTok, and I'm like, well, I've never been on TikTok. Don't you worry. I said, okay, we're going, right? And
Yeah.
and you have to embrace change, right? And
Mhm.
you have to be courageous, right? And you got to believe in the people around you that you've got experts and they're gonna bring you through it. So
Yeah.
would it be my first choice to do it? No, but I have to step up. I have to be part of that. And I have a team that's supporting me to do it.
I love that too. That's a great message there for entrepreneurs that are listening is you don't need to do it all. You can outsource some of these things, rely on your team. If you don't have a team, start thinking about a team. I always say to my newbie entrepreneurs, you could spend $50 a week on a VA, as far as like doing some things that will help you out, a couple $100 a month, may get a TikTok expert, may get an Instagram expert, and it may just revolutionize your business. So look at ways that you can outsource, you'll grow exponentially faster. And it takes courage to do that because you have to extend your vision to other people, build trust, build workability, but it can be a huge growth opportunity for you and them. So that's awesome.
Well, and there's my favorite reading is Michael Gerber. He has the book E-Myth Revisited. I don't know if you've read
Yes.
it, and it's
Yeah.
about being that entrepreneur and standardizing and building out, right? Because
Hmm.
you could be the best podcast and I could be the best coach, I could be the best person on board. But
Hmm.
if I want to expand myself beyond that, I can't. I have to make sure I build business beyond myself, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So, last question for you, Deborah, is if I was to give you a billboard and you could put anything on it, and it could be anywhere on the planet or outside of the planet, what would you put on it and where would it be?
Wow, didn't see that one coming. So a billboard.
Yeah,
A sandwich board. So if I was standing on the street corner with that
sure. Or driving on the
billboard
401 or
or
wherever you want to put it. Yeah. There's enough,
wherever I might be.
there's enough billboards on the 401 or the Gardner right now. But
Yeah, I would my message would be one more woman on a board, one board at a time. Just more hashtag more women on boards. That would be my hashtag. That would be if I had to put anything on it, hashtag more women on boards.
awesome. And where would you put it?
I would put it, um, I'd put it across the TSX
On a
and I'd put
banner.
it across NASDAQ listing. I'd put it across any of the security exchange. If they have billboards, I'd put it right there because those are the companies. Companies need to be thinking it has to be mindful, top of mind. So if they see it and if they're reading it, if it's flashing up in their news feeds, hashtag more women on boards.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Deborah, for being on today. It was great catching up with you, hearing about your three uniques, and also about the organization that you founded and getting more women on board. So that's amazing.
Thank you, Brenda. Really appreciated it.
And for all of our listeners, I always say thanks for coming on. And remember, there's 7.8 billion people on this planet. So get out there and share your three uniques. Take care, everyone.